I did not think there was a shot in hell we'd be starting with this game here, to the point that this game was on my low priority screen at the very far right of my room that I'm only ever glancing at usually. That changed really quickly. I had to bump it up the priority order. I'm talking about Panthers 31, Rams 28. One of the biggest upsets that we've seen here today. I will give you this take here, Chris, as we start with the Carolina Panthers. I think this was the perfectly idealized version of the Panthers offense. And what I mean by that is we got 40 carries in this game. That was their most of the season for the Carolina Panthers. Their 164 rushing yards were the third most for their team this season. The two nuclear Rico Dowdle games were the two better performances against the Dolphins and the Cowboys. It was the best statistical game of Bryce Young's career. That is right. Bryce Young's day today was the best of his career in the three following metrics: EPA per dropback, passer rating, adjusted yards per attempt. And again, I think it was because they were able to establish that running game, which was we'll talk about this in a moment, but it was a near even split in the backfield. And we saw multiple downfield shots on fourth down to both Tedero and McMillan, who scored on his lone reception. And my guy, Jalen Coker, led the team with 74 yards, 6 targets, both again led the team. And his long touchdown reception came on fourth down as well, in addition to a clutch inbreaker late in the game to kind of seal this one away. So, Chris, again, this is sort of the idealized version of what the Panthers want to be. They want both Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle cooking. They want Bryce Young to be aggressive and push the ball downfield to the routes that have been available all year. We got it. And we got it against the team that we all kind of were sort of assuming was the best team in football.
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing, because I'm old enough to remember just 6 days ago watching the same team in primetime, unable to move the ball against the injury-riddled 49ers defense, and now they just go out and do this stuff. Where was this 6 days ago? It's been such an up and down type of season for Bryce Young and the Panthers that it's hard to calibrate to the type of play. But I'm 100% with you that from a play calling and also on the field results standpoint, this was probably how Dave Canales wants to try and get Bryce Young into this level of confidence that he can operate the offense, allowing both Hubbard and Dowdle to work on the early downs and setting up, let's say, manageable third and fourth downs. And to your point, I mean, he was absolute nails on fourth down. I mean, two for 76 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, that throw to Tedero McMillan, the 43-yarder, absolutely. I mean, a beautiful throw. I mean, layered over the defender. I mean, the same thing for the shot to Jalen Coker when he beat Emmanuel Forbes down the right sideline for that one as well. I mean, both of those setups, you could almost see them coming in the sense that Canales wants to give those opportunities to a guy like Bryce Young. And he was even talking about it in his presser after the game, that he still believes in Young as a passer and putting him in those types of situations where they're not going to try and play conservative. He still wants him to take those types of shots downfield and having the personnel there in order to do it. And it's not just relying on a big-bodied receiver like McMillan. I mean, now putting a guy like Jalen Coker, who he's been operating on around like 75% of the routes for the past like 3 or 4 weeks, and he's been back from injury. But really dialing up that type of route or that type of concept with that specific receiver in that situation, it does go to show how much Canales believes in just his offense, the vision for Bryce Young and his development, and how we can really see this offense start to push forward with this personnel they've got in place. So I was really impressed, but then at the same time, it's just, can they keep it consistent enough that this is something that we can start to bank on from a fantasy standpoint? Because that's really the hard thing for a lot of us right now, is that week in and week out, we don't know which version of this Panthers offense we're going to get.
I mean, they might be the weirdest team in the NFL, maybe at least like the most unpredictable team in the NFL right now. They've had just so many awesome performances. I mean, to the point that you just made, Bryce Young in this game, 8th best adjusted yards per attempt by any starting quarterback this year at 13.3. His week 11 game against the Falcons is the 31st best. And then sandwiched between those two games is that disgusting effort that we saw against the 49ers on primetime. So it's just up, down, snip, snap, snip, snap. We have no idea what we're going to get from this Panthers team on a weekly basis. And I don't really know how to calibrate to that. I think that it just shows there is some promise here, but they've got to find the consistency. I don't know if Young can find that consistency. I do think that we saw today something that there's like a weird narrative on the internet, especially on Panthers Twitter, that for some they think for some reason like Dave Canales is not trying to push the ball downfield with the scheme. Like you watch it, there's a long developing routes downfield for everybody. Just I think the quarterback just hasn't consistently triggered on those plays. And then you saw when he does in this game, when he's on, when he's feeling it, they push the ball downfield. Like I think it is a quarterback thing. And I don't know if we're going to see Young find that consistency, but it will at least be interesting to track as they try to push the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to win the NFC South. They'll at least be relevant in that race the rest of the way. I do just want to get your thoughts quickly on the backfield here in Carolina. As I mentioned, this was the first time I think the Chuba Hubbard has started to look better and better. I think he obviously got a bunch of crap online because he started to really fall behind Rico Dowdle, especially when he first came back. I think he came back and he wasn't 100% healthy from that calf injury. His metrics look really poor stacked next to Chuba Hubbard or next to Rico Dowdle. But now I think we've seen Chuba start to get back to the form we normally expect from him. In this game, he played on 58% of the snaps. Rico Dowdle was 44%. He had the high ownership of the routes over Rico Dowdle, but touch-wise, it was 20 for Rico, 19 to Chuba. And I do think, again, an idealized version, they want both of these backs to carry a heavy workload like that if they can get away with it, if the game script is right. So what do you how do you react to this from a fantasy standpoint? What should people do if they have these Panthers backs?
If you have either of those two, they do fall into, I would say, the mid-range mid to low end, like RB2 realm for me at this point, because this was the matchup, or at least the type of matchup and the results that, in an idealized version, kind of what we've been saying about the Panthers offense as a whole, this is where they can produce. I mean, both of them from an adjusted yards after contact per attempt standpoint, rushing success rate. I mean, being able to set up Bryce Young to continue allowing him to also move the chains. This is what you would want to see out of them. And I think they even noted during the broadcast about Hubbard himself commenting on the fact that he kind of pushed himself to come back, just seeing how well Rico Dowdle was performing and also hearing some of the sentiment on social media about him falling behind. And that's what set him back a little bit. So now seeing him fully healthy, able to at least push this 50-50 type split. I mean, you can also see him being used as the receiver because he winds up getting the receiving touchdown as well. So I'm looking at both of them more as like I was saying, in that RB, like low end RB2-ish type of way, but also looking at their upcoming games. They do go on bye, get the Saints in week 15, if I'm remembering correctly. And then afterwards, they do have some tough matchups against the Bucs and Seattle. So that's where it just becomes a little bit tough, where the opportunity might be there. But of course, the game environment might not set up as well as this matchup against the Rams.
Let's talk about those Rams here on offense. They fell out of the game script that we were expecting rather early because Matthew Stafford finally ran cold in terms of turnover variance. He plays an aggressive style of football. He hadn't thrown an interception since week 4. He threw 2 picks here, lost a fumble, but Davante Adams still had a monster game, 2 touchdowns in this one. He now has 14 touchdowns this season. My question to you, Chris, just thoughts overall on this performance with the Rams, and can Davante Adams score 20 touchdowns this year? I kind of think he can.
Oh, I think he can definitely score 20 touchdowns, especially at the rate, or at least where he's creating or generating those touchdowns. Because as of right now, Adams has 9 touchdowns from inside the 5, 9, and the next closest wide receiver is Michael Pittman at 4. And now even just those are just the results. How many opportunities he had was inside the 5? He's had 16 targets from inside the 5. The next closest is Amon-Ra St. Brown with 7. It's just kind of hilarious to me to think back to how Aaron Rodgers got the MVP award just like 3 or 4 years ago by doing the same stuff with the exact same wide receiver. And now we're seeing it play out again with Matthew Stafford and Davante Adams. Now, I know Stafford didn't make his best case for the MVP, but if he continues to do stuff like this and generating at least 2 to 3 touchdowns per game, and of course, Adams being the beneficiary for it, I think 20 touchdowns is probably within the realm of possibility for Adams. But overall, I just think this was more of just a down game for Stafford, which is in the cards for any quarterback, especially one that doesn't have the mobility like the Josh Allen, like we just watched plow in for a touchdown against the Steelers. When you live on that sort of razor's edge in terms of you're throwing into tight windows, you're looking at receivers like Puka Nacua and Davante Adams on a week in, week out basis, you're down to, at least you're bound to have those types of down games at some point throughout the season. And this was just it. There were a number of plays where I saw Stafford would drop back. He would hitch and double clutch a couple of times for letting it loose. And still, you'd see like Puka Nacua, he had a solid game, had just one of the most ridiculous catches I've seen down the left sideline in this game. But still, if you are asked to operate an offense in this type of way that Stafford is, I mean, this is just bound to happen at some point. So just 4 pressures I saw for Stafford in this game. Wasn't a ton that Carolina was doing defensively to really stop them. It was just, I mean, bad bounce here or an off, or like, what was it? The first interception was one off of, I think it was Derek Brown's helmet or something like that popped up into the air that had the first interception, winds up getting caught from behind for the lost fumble. I would say just a few chaotic plays here and there that leads to the result here. So I'm not too worried about Stafford and what we should expect from him moving forward.
Buccaneers 20, Cardinals 17. The Bucs, in Bucky Irving's return to action, saw their starting running back play on 54% of the snaps. He led the team with an 81% share of the running back rushes, 73% of the touches overall, 81 yards from scrimmage, Chris, with a touchdown, and he had another touchdown called back, so it could have been an even bigger day for Bucky Irving. This is yet another chapter in the story of don't care which running back starts the game, okay? There was, of course, there was a little bit of a fantasy freak out when, oh my God, Rashad White is the starting right? No one cares about that. Doesn't matter. Bucky Irving touches the ball 19 times to 5 for White and 2 for Sean Tucker.
Yeah, that was the thing that probably confused me the most, not the Bucky Irving portion of it all. I know there were reports pregame about him being on something of a snap count. So the 17 of 21 carries for him and seeing how well he was also being used also as a receiver, that's not too terribly surprising. The thing that I found the most interesting was Sean Tucker being relegated to the RB3 portion, where Tucker took over that backfield. He pushed White to the back end of that duo when it was White not being able to be efficient or being able to be useful even as a pass catcher. And Sean Tucker was really able to do both of those things over the past couple of weeks or so. So seeing White being used in the red zone and all of that, that's where I thought it was going to be more Sean Tucker as the RB2. So for folks that were trying to ride that train or continue at least see if he would be able to force some sort of split between him and Bucky Irving. I mean, Tucker to me at least looks like a viable drop candidate for after this week, because it looks like it's just Irving and White moving forward.
Yeah, he's simply like an insurance policy, because I think he is more so Bucky Irving's now at this point, now that we've seen more from Tucker, he's more of his direct backup as a rusher, whereas White is the change of pace passing down back. And yeah, maybe there's a chance that if Bucky Irving came in here and he wasn't looking good early on in the game, they may have dialed up more Tucker. They may have dialed up more White, but you could see it right away. It's like, oh yeah, they've really been missing number 7 in this backfield. Yeah. And he, again, was an instant help to this team. So if you held on to Bucky this long, he was on one of your IR spots, congratulations. I think you got yourself an awesome starting running back for the stretch run here. And again, somebody that the Bucs desperately need to get that run game back on track. In the passing game, we saw a banged up Baker Mayfield having, I don't know, kind of a classic Baker Mayfield game. Looked pretty good to me. Also, we saw some signs of life from Chris Godwin in this game. Bumped up to 67% of the routes. He had 3 catches for 78 yards, made some explosive plays after the catch, did drop a touchdown. Of course, like right after, I was like, man, Chris Godwin looking pretty good. He drops a touchdown, but still good to see some signs of life from Chris Godwin. We also got some reports that Mike Evans might be coming back. Jalen McMillan might even be able to come back by the end of the season. So the Bucs seem to be getting some of their dudes back for a potential playoff push here in short order, Chris.
Yeah, and I'd say the only thing that happens, though, when you see one receiver start to perform well, it's probably at the expense of another, and just another down game for Emeka Egbuka. I mean, 30% target rate, which amounted to just 8 targets. But I don't know, I wanted to talk with you about it a bit, because at least the way that I'm looking at it, as he's almost doing his rookie season in reverse, where you do see some of the development and questions about how he fits into an offense, especially one that has multiple pass catchers already featured within it. And then towards the back end of the season, you get the boom weeks, you get the shot plays, you get some of the multi-touchdown games. But Egbuka did it earlier in the season. It was weeks 1 through 5 where he was averaging over 14 air yards per target. And Baker Mayfield was hitting him on a lot of those deep shots, and he was averaging 20 PPR points per game. But now with Godwin back and also some of the the injuries across the offensive line, and of course the injuries to Mayfield himself, I mean, he's starting to now adjust to a lot of the offensive changes. He's down to about 9-10 air yards per target. And seeing that switch up, he's now having to figure out how to adjust to all of that change. So I think that goes to a part of it, but I don't know if you've seen anything different. But I do think that it's just, again, having to reconfigure how he gets involved in this offense. I think it's really been the change for Egbuka over these last 4 or 5 weeks or so.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things at play here. One, he had a pretty bad drop over the middle of the field where if he hauls that one in, he certainly has maybe, like 60 yards on the day, and it looks a little bit better from a bottom line fantasy performance. But regardless, I think it's some of the stuff that we've kind of been talking about where he plays the fewest snaps in the slot from a rate perspective when you're looking at like him versus Chris Godwin versus Tez Johnson versus Sterling Shepard, because all those guys kind of need to play in the slot. So I am certainly more interested in Egbuka when he gets to move around the formation. I think that's more the type of receiver he is, not just like a stationary X receiver, even in condensed sets. I don't think, though, Chris, it really matters to me. And this is something from, we're going to talk about this with like Roma Dunze later too, where starts off the season really hot, goes very cold. Number one, I think that as long as those guys are not losing their jobs, which neither one of them is, I think that there's still a chance that even in, down the stretch, they can still have like a big performance to kind of change the narrative on their season. But also if Egbuka does have the rookie season where all the good games are at the beginning, does that really matter when we're talking about him next year and going forward from like a dynasty perspective? Like, we know he has that potential. We typically like to see it, start off slow and then kind of build up. But to me, that's not really as instructive as we like to make it, in my opinion. I mean, Brian Thomas Jr. had his best games at the end of his rookie season, and we know how that's gone in his second season. Like, that doesn't necessarily matter to me.
No, and I think that's completely fair. And almost, I would say, if we're going to do the same mental exercise that we were doing with Justin Jefferson and what his value is going to look like for 2026, you could almost tell yourself a story where Egbuka falls a little bit because people will have these last few games as the thing that sticks in their mind as being the more permanent thing that they're thinking about, because like, oh yeah, he started off hot, but he had a bunch of down weeks towards the back end, and then Chris Godwin came back, then Mike Evans came back, and then things didn't really get any better for Egbuka and didn't have those boom weeks. So you could tell yourself a story how he's more of a 4th rounder, 5th rounder of next season, where we know that the boom weeks can happen for him. And depending on what happens with Mike Evans over the offseason, if he decides to hang him up, could he ascend back into that top 3 or like the 2nd or 3rd round, just based off of the rapport that he's already showed with Baker Mayfield and the talent that we already know that he has. So it's just, again, probably getting in sync with this quarterback and figuring out how he fits into the offense as a whole.
Yeah, I think really figuring out what his role is going to be key, both to the end of his rookie season and going forward. But yeah, he certainly is a guy that is becoming very difficult to trust on a weekly basis in fantasy. But I just know from my experience with this position that the moment you think like, I can't trust this guy anymore, you're going to put him on your bench, and that's when he's going to, catch a touchdown and completely change the narrative of the way this goes. Cardinals, the other team that played in this game, I think we got to look here at what the passing offense looks like with Marvin Harrison, because he was on and off the field with both coming back from the appendectomy, but also 61% snaps, coming back from the appendectomy, but also had kind of a heel injury pop up in this game as well. But from a distribution standpoint, we got 7 targets for Michael Wilson on a team high route share. Trey McBride, 9 targets, 8 catches. Marvin Harrison, 7 targets, 6 catches, 69 yards. Also could have had a kind of a walk-in touchdown where he got great separation on a go route, but Jacoby Brissett missed him. I did kind of see some alternating between Wilson and Marvin Harrison Jr. at X and flanker, which is good to see. And Jacoby Brissett just continues to throw the football no matter what. He's kind of like the boring Jameis Winston. He's not nearly as like the highs aren't as high and the lows aren't as low necessarily, but he misses a throw down the field. He comes right back up and rifles it down the field again. So I think we'll continue to get some usable fantasy games from all 3 of these guys, but it's not going to be as concentrated as it was when it was just Michael Wilson and Trey McBride these last few games.
Yeah, and I'd be really be interested to get the route share or the route breakdown for each of these guys, because as I was looking at it
Mhm.
when it was just Michael Wilson, it did seem like there was enough, I would say, mirrored usage between what Marvin Harrison was doing in terms of the hitch routes, comebacks, and also seeing the same thing from Michael Wilson when he was the focal point of that offense. But the one thing that I did see in True Media shortly after this game was over was that Harrison was targeted out of the slot on 42.9% of the routes that he ran from the interior. So
Mm.
he did get a few of those
Yeah.
layup targets. So that's where I could see how he winds up being the better wide receiver from a box score standpoint. But I do wonder, kind of to your point, if that's going to flip flop on a week to week standpoint, or if they just are going to put Michael Wilson as the primary X receiver, maybe try and figure out if there's a new way that they can showcase Marvin Harrison in this passing offense moving forward. Because if there's anybody that could probably benefit from moving around, having to like maybe doing some pre-snap motion type of stuff, or even just moving him into the slot and targeting more from the interior, it would be Marvin Harrison Jr.
No doubt about it. And that's kind of what I'm hoping to see more and more of. And I think, again, we did get some minor glimpses of it today. We'll have to check in on the Harrison heel injury going forward and what that is going to do for his rest of season outlook.